Good morning, everyone. I am here 3 days after I just posted the Clipper route video, which now has over 12,000 views in 3 days, which is really awesome for me. I've been putting out videos a long time, and it's really cool to see a response like this and see that people really liked that editing style. And I had asked in the comments if people could put in some questions they had. I'm going to do a question and answer. Because of that editing style, I didn't do a ton of voiceover or explaining some of the choices we made. I mostly just turned the GoPro on and filmed when stuff was happening. So I'm here to answer some of your questions and just give a little life update as well. That'll be at the end of the video. I'll be letting you know what's next, why there's a cute little racy boat behind me, and yeah, more on that later. The number one question is about the route, and yes, I should have put a map on this. I will include our Predict Wind link in the description, as well as I'm sure I'll put a map somewhere here. It shows how far west we had to go. We ended up doing 4,300 nautical miles. We were expecting to be around 3,000 nautical miles, so that's a huge difference, and there's a couple reasons why that ended up happening. One was the weather conditions we got. When we reached about halfway, we were expecting to cross the Pacific High, which happens pretty consistently throughout the summer. It shifts, so it grows bigger. So the reason we left last May was to go before it got too large. And unfortunately, when we finally got to the Pacific High, it just kind of all broke apart. And so we motored for a couple days, 2 days, and then it just spread apart, and we just kind of were chasing the wind. We ended up turning the engine off at night a couple times. We motored a bit, sailed a bit, tried to preserve, but we were just chasing little tendrils of winds for maybe a week. So it was pretty frustrating. We originally intended to motor across the high. That was the plan, and the hope was by the time we got to the other side, we would catch the winds that would bring us to the northwest. And it just never really happened like that. But that's the way it goes. Perhaps, yeah, so when did we leave? The reason we left a little bit later in May was because I was filming The Amazing Race. So that was a huge push. As soon as I was done filming, flew down to Mexico, already had the boat prepared, provisioned up, and left. And I really wish that we could have left a few weeks earlier. I think it would have made a big difference to the weather systems that we saw. Oh yeah, about the routing as well. When we left Mexico, the currents naturally want to pull you kind of more to the southwest, and we were really seeing that. At first, the first like 5 days, we really were trying to fight that, and we were on a close haul, just really pointed into the wind. This boat points pretty well for a cruising boat, and the boat was smashing, and we were just exhausted from that motion. It wasn't comfortable in the big swell compared to if you were pointing in a more protected waterway. So we ended up falling off a little bit to a close reach and made a big difference, and naturally the currents and winds kind of swept us, started sweeping us up, and we stayed on that close reach all the way until we found the rigging issue. More on that later. But that was kind of interesting. A lot of the times that we wanted to fight it, it ended up just kind of naturally bringing us to that area anyways. And we found that on our route to Hawaii too. When was that? 7 years ago now. Same sort of thing. You're looking at all the weather routing, you're looking at what information's coming in, and the boat just kind of naturally wants to go where it wants to go. You're just guiding it there. That being said, there was a couple questions about weather routing, predict wind, how we got our weather. And we had, one way was through Predict Wind subscription, and that I wanted for the tracking route as well. And I really like their modeling that you can choose from on both the iPhone and your phone. You can have that. We had a Iridium Go subscription. That was our backup, and basically it takes, if you want a ton of information, different models to look at, it takes a long time to get that information. We found that we had a ton of power with all our solar, thanks Lightleaf, and we ended up just having using Starlink. So we would plug in Starlink a couple hours every afternoon once finished making water, and that was a super quick way to get our weather. We did try to use Predict Wind's routing, but we found that this could be user error, but it just had us pointing too high into the wind, and we just found it wasn't a comfortable ride. I couldn't figure out the settings, how to change that, and also it was kind of useless 3 days. I mean, weather is only accurate for about 3 days, but it just wasn't far enough in advance to give us accurate routing. So we just got really, I don't know, I'd say that was one thing I got a lot better on this trip, was just being comfortable out looking at the models and seeing where we needed to go, especially after we hit that high and we were just kind of dancing between these little wind pockets. And yeah, it was kind of, got a little bit obsessed about looking at the weather and trying to make the most of the wind. Okay, that's that question. Okay, so I guess I'll start with our first two issues that we had, and there were some questions around this. Well, the very first one was that by the end of day one into day two, we were in some pretty bumpy seas, and I noticed that our water supply was down to about 3/4, and then by day three it was down to 1/3, and I thought maybe it was just the tank sensor wasn't reading right. I wasn't planning on making water right away until we started using more water, but I made water and it wasn't really going up. So by day three we had to have a conversation. We looked in the tank and it was nearly empty, and we were pretty exhausted at that point, because as you get into passage, day three is pretty challenging to get over that hump. Once you're over, you kind of settle into the rhythm. But we're pretty exhausted. We're trying to figure out how we were losing water. We didn't see water pouring out of the tank, no holes in the tank. Where was it going? And it ended up being that the day before we left, I did some work on the bilge pump, just gave it a little inspection and clean out. And to access it, I had turned the water manifold levers down, which is open, and to give myself room, and I accidentally left them that way. So the main 70-gallon tank was coming into the manifold and going back down to the other tanks in the sloppy seas as we were pitching. So it was going forward, and it was going to the tank that does have a leak in it that we've never used, and it was then going into the bilge. So it was pretty devastating to realize that we had lost almost our whole tank, and that was supposed to be our main water supply. I would have loved to try and get that other backup tank not leaking, but it just wasn't in the cards, and we do have a water maker. So we made the decision that if within 2 more days we can get our water supply back over half tank with the water maker, then we wouldn't turn around, because after that we kind of had no choice but to turn around, because it's either Hawaii or head back. So we were able to get enough water, close those manifolds, and it stayed. So that was a huge relief. However, I guess it was like week 4, we decided to treat ourselves. This is when we were doing a bit of motoring. Treat ourselves to a hot water shower. And once again, we lost our whole water tank, which I can't believe this happened twice on this trip. But yeah, we lost our water tank. I had opened our coolant lines which run through the hot water tank. They were previously closed, and with all the vibration and all of a sudden some heat coming to those pipes, one of the hoses burst. The engine was on, the water pump was on, and the water tank came spurting through the whole aft area. Luckily it didn't damage anything, but we had some more work to do with the water maker. So really, this whole trip, the water maker was the MVP. Very grateful for it. Okay, the rigging. It ended up being, discovered it 364 days after our re-rig, which we spent so much money on. So it was really disappointing, because of all things to fail, that was the one thing I was not expecting to fail. It ended up after we brought it, basically I brought it, checked into the country, brought it straight to the riggers. They replaced that shroud. They did a full inspection on the rig and said that it was most likely a manufacturer defect, because there's 19 strands. If there's a slight difference in tension in one of them, basically the whole shroud could be held up by that one strand. I thought it was 2 strands that was broken, but it was just the one. Not that that makes it any better. I mean, things happen. Anything can break. It's not all perfect. You can't, just because it's new and you've spent a lot of money on it, doesn't mean you can fully trust it. You still have to be prepared. In hindsight, I wish I had a longer stretch of Dyneema. My old boat had the little, instead of swage, it was stay lock, I think it's called, and you could replace those parts. A lot of people prefer that, but swage is kind of the new way to do it, which you can't replace when you're at sea, unless you replace the whole shroud. But anyways, that's hindsight for you, and there's really nothing we could have done. I think we did the best that we could. It also meant that moving forward after that point, we had to slow the boat down a lot, because we didn't want to put any unnecessary stress on the rig than we needed to. So we ended up sailing with mostly just the staysail instead of the jib, and it meant we were doing like 4 knots most of the rest of the trip, which is pretty hard when all you want to do is get home. But we got home safely, so that's what matters. Okay, that's the rigging. I think that's it. Oh, someone asked how many books did we read, and we were having a lot of issues. Of course, electronics these days are all linked to the internet, and we downloaded a bunch of books. We both had a Kindle, and within a few days they all auto removed themselves from the Kindle. We tried with Starlink to put them back on, but it would just happen again. Don't know what we were doing wrong there, but we ended up just downloading a whole bunch of podcasts, and with Starlink we were able to just keep downloading more, and we listened to so many podcasts. It's a really great way to pass time on night watch and gets your imagination going, gets you in. Sometimes, you know, you can be a little bit anxious on board. I had a lot of anxieties this trip, I enjoyed it immensely, and I love the challenge of it, but offshore sailing, there's a lot of anxieties around it, and I was having, especially with the rigging, I was having some like near anxiety attacks about it. So the podcast really helped me come out of that, and yeah, it was great. My favorite was the Outlaws Ocean, and we also both listened to Fred the Head, which is a funny British murder mystery sort of thing. Okay, someone else asked, do you prefer offshore or coastal cruising now that I've done both? And in my mind, they're kind of apples and oranges. I think I'll always be drawn to the open ocean, and I know I'll be back out there again. But it's just not something that I need to do constantly. I do love the, I guess, securities and the different types of excitement that coastal cruising brings too. Yeah, we'll see what happens. And then lots of love from my dad as well in the comments, which is awesome. I'm so grateful that we've done both our trip to Hawaii, which he captained, and then this trip, the Clipper route, I captained. But we both really make a good team, and we're both obviously he has a lot more experience than me, but I know my boat better, so it was a really nice time to be able to share those memories with my dad, and I'm really fortunate that I got to do so. And for my mom for letting him go. She's such a good sport. But that being said, there were some questions about his background. He is super calm in stressful situations, even though he had some anxieties on this trip too, which is very normal. But he was a civil engineer for his professional career, but he also refitted a Formosa 51, which is what we grew up on, and that's what we sailed to Mexico on when I was 14, 15. So lots of experience with boats, refitting boats, coming up with creative solutions for fixing things. Yeah, and we both, I think, are pretty good at that, so it's always fun to do. And then, yeah, then we both sailed to Hawaii together in 2016. So lots of experience. And although we're nothing close to professionals, I don't think you really have to be when you're out there. I mean, we weren't trying to win any races, that's for sure. We're pretty slow. But experiences and just being creative with your solutions is really what it comes down to, overcoming whatever obstacle comes up, because there's no other options out there. That's it for questions. I think that's like 25 minutes, so thanks for sticking through that. But just a little update on life, because that was last July that we got home, so that's quite a few months ago now. It's now end of March. I ended up taking quite a few months off of filming, sailing, did lots of work. My bank account was pretty low. So I've been diving lots. I ended up diving on the East Coast in Newfoundland, doing some work locally here. And Tyler and I, we've been just, both working and doing lots of fun things around here, enjoying being back on Vancouver Island. And we got engaged in September, so that's really exciting. People kind of wonder where Tyler went, but he's still really focused on his snowboarding career. So the long-term cruising goal was never really our thing. We wanted to do it for a year, maybe 2. We did it for a year, and really grateful for that. And he's on track to go to the Paralympics in 2026. And we've just bought a house with an awesome big shop, which we get possession of soon. And most excitingly, I mean, that's pretty exciting, but I also bought a new boat. Oh yeah, sold Footloose. There's a lot that's been going on. Sold Footloose because kind of that cruising dream is kind of on pause right now. I'm sure there'll be another cruising boat in the future. Tyler and I both want to do some more surfing, sailing, but there will be another boat for that. We can't afford to live in a house and have a big boat. So sold Footloose to some great guys, and they want to do some big trips on her. It's bittersweet, but got some new exciting sailing plans. My best friend and I, Sylvia, bought this Santana 20, and we have entered the race to Alaska for June 2024. So that's only a couple months away now, and I've been gearing her up for this race, and yeah, I'll be documenting that. So those are the next few videos that will come out. It's been really nice to have a break from editing and filming. It kind of burnt out after the Amazing Race of just putting my life on the internet, and the Amazing Race was pretty awesome. We got second place. It was a really cool experience, but it took a toll on my mental health having my life on the internet, and I needed a little break from it. So I'm feeling refreshed, really excited to document the race to Alaska, preparations, how we're doing to prep the boat, and then also the race itself. So if you have any questions about that, please sure to let me know. And yeah, I'll be seeing you guys around. Thanks so much for watching.